Hello, control freaks. This is Paul, and we are getting ready for another Let's Talk Reef. Let's get started. So here we are, another episode that we're going to have today. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are going to get into the Trident. We're going to get down and dirty with it, as they would say, opening it up, seeing what's going on, how it works, all those sorts of different things. And we are excited to dive into that. I have news. There will not just be one person on here with us today as we go into the Trident and we take a look at that, but I thought I would bring in someone from our customer support team. So let's go ahead and bring him right on in.
What's going on, control freaks?
Hey, Carlos, how you doing? This is Carlos from Neptune Systems Support. He is one of our support reps. So what do we have to do here to get into and tell people how the Trident works?
Sure, absolutely. First things first, let's go to the rear part of the Trident. Let's disconnect the sample and the waistline from the back.
Done.
And the one-link cable.
Oh, the one-link cable. All right.
And if you are overseas, disconnect the 24-volt power supply and your aqua bus connection.
All right, so we are clear there. We've gotten rid of all of those things.
That's right, no power to the machine.
Okay, now
let's open up the reagent drawer. Let's remove the reagent drawer. Let's unscrew the 3 bottles and put them to the side.
No bottles.
No bottles. Put the reagent drawer
Normally there
away.
would be bottles.
Yeah,
right?
but don't put them in a way where your kids can get them, where your cat could tip them over. It's going to be a sad day.
I told people to save the caps.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Do you remember I told people to save the caps?
The caps.
So this is a great reason why we save the caps. So take your reagent bottles off to the side and don't do this on the floor. Right,
No.
like, you know, if you want to open up your Trident, put it on a desk. So
a countertop, a table, a coffee table. There's areas, if you have flat spaces somewhere, that's more comfortable to work.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we've taken out that.
Now the next thing, let's remove the cuvette cover from the very front.
That's this guy here.
Awesome.
Some of these are a little loose, right? That's normal. The idea is that this visor is supposed to be very easy to remove, right? If it isn't clicking or you find that it's always falling out, it's due for several reasons. Biggest easy way to fix that, just put a little piece of sided double tape on there.
That's it.
It's done. It's not going to fall off anymore. You may be like, oh, I don't have to put a piece of double. It's the easiest solution to a problem that's not very easy to fix.
That's right.
You know, just sending you a new visor is not the answer, unfortunately. So, visor's off.
So now let's turn the Trident either on its back or its side. And now you have 4 rubber feet. They're actually screws. Do not pull on the rubber feet. Just turn the rubber feet to the left, counterclockwise, and continue to turn.
So I removed 3 of them already in preparation for this, so we only have to do 1.
And if it's a little tough to take off, grab a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Just yank on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Or a paper towel, just anything to give you a little bit more grip and continue to rotate.
The big thing here is you do not want to have the rubber come off. So that's on, I hope we can see that okay, Vincent? That is on a screw right there. And then that screw has a piece of rubber on the top of it, okay? Right. It's very easy that, you know, being in a saltwater environment, this could get a little tough or rusted sometimes. That's right. It's very normal. So just like he said, use something with traction and make sure you don't use like pliers to pull that off, because what will happen then is you'll start just turning it and you'll basically rip that rubber right off.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
All right, so then put that off to the side in a safe place. Don't lose it, okay? And then
let's turn the Trident right side up with the reagent drawer facing you.
Okay, it's kind of facing towards me.
That's right. And now you have 2 thumbs, hopefully. Put your thumbs inside the reagent drawer towards the bottom. Separate, grab onto the back of the Trident, onto the gray outer cover. Separate from the back. Grab it from either side from the middle. Continue to separate that outer cover from the inner chassis until you're able to lift it up and put it to the side. Whoa. And now we got to see them.
So this is where the magic happens, okay? The next area I want to talk about is it's kind of a preface for the error after that, right? But it is the basically the bad range error, right?
That's right.
It's out of range on alkalinity, calcium, or magnesium.
Yep.
Okay. So the Trident does have windows in which it can measure things, right?
Yes.
And this is in our FAQ and things like that. But the alkalinity range can measure between 5 and 15 DKH. The calcium can do
250 to 875.
Booyah. Okay, and then finally magnesium can go from this is a typo, 850 to 1950. It could not possibly be what I have written here. So those are the ranges in which it can measure these things.
Correct.
When it is beyond those ranges, you get the error of bad alk range,
Correct.
bad CA range, bad magnesium.
So you're either above or below possibly those ranges.
So it's possible, and a lot of times on new tanks, right? They'll very often get bad alk range, and that's because it is a new tank. They are just now trying to get into dosing. They're just now trying to get into corals and things like that. And then what happens on new tanks? Like everything's really good. They're doing water changes, but then calcium, coralline algae starts to develop.
Yeah.
That starts to consume all the alkalinity, but they aren't doing alkalinity dosing yet.
Nope.
Right? And so as a result of that, it's not uncommon to see alkalinity very low on fish-only tanks or people that are just getting started into the dosing thing and putting additives in there.
That's right. That's very, 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 very true. And this is where we expect Trident to help these customers absolutely bring their aquarium to the next level.
Sometimes we'll see bad CA range because it is actually out of range.
Yes.
Right? But more often than not, the reason why it's out of range is we think we're pulling in a certain amount of fluid, right? But we're not actually pulling that amount of fluid in. And now that's happening because of mechanical reasons.
That's right.
Right? So the most common reason, let me get this out here and come here. And Carlos can correct me if I'm wrong here. The most common reason that this kind of happens, and this happens oftentimes during a reagent change. So people say, oh, everything's been going great until I changed my reagents.
That's right.
Because that's the first time you actually did something with the Trident, you know? So a lot of times what will happen is here on the reagent pickup tube assembly, right?
Little connection.
It's a very little connection. So I'll go ahead and pull it off right there. It's a 90-degree angle there, okay, that comes in there and stuff like that. What can happen though is that this pickup tube, right, is not on all the way, because when you were changing it out, you kind of pulled it off or something like that. Or, you know, I've even seen, like, because people are not very careful when they're opening up, you can get small little tears in that farm tubing.
It can happen.
And it most often happens right here at this right angle, or even right here up at the 90-degree angle.
Yes.
What that then introduces is air, okay? And that air, we're not pulling reagent, which we think we're pulling.
That's right.
We're pulling air, which then means that we thought we pulled in, 2.1 milliliters, but we actually pulled in 1.7 milliliters, which then causes all of these other sort of things.
Skews off. All the parameters are now thrown off.
The other thing that can happen is, so as I was talking, how is this? There we go. Here is the pinch valves and things of that. These pinch valves doesn't happen very often, but they can get stuck, right? And they could get stuck because A, they're having a mechanical issue, or B, they just need to get tapped.
And I need to preface this: if you're testing your solenoid valves or pinch valve, make sure you are testing it with the device powered off.
Yeah, absolutely, because you could be in the middle of a test and you start opening valves. It's not a good thing. So the unit's powered off. You just pull everything in here, and you just basically stick your hand in here, and you touch each of those valves, and you make sure that they can go in and out, right? If those go in and out and you don't feel any resistance, then that's not the issue either.
Sure.
The other problem can be is when you're closing the reagent drawer, you did not follow the directions of having the reagent tubing aligned in a certain way.
That's right.
And you get kinks. Right?
Yes.
And so as a result of getting those kinks, right, again,
no more reagents.
We're not pulling the right amount of reagent, and then you're getting those out of range errors, right? Sometimes you actually are out of range, but more often than not, I find those to be the problem.
Yeah, and a quick fix that I've found, and especially for our customers, is that if it is that, open up slightly your reagent drawer, right? Run a combined test. If you start getting successful testing after that point, you know that the issue has to be because of the lines. Yeah.
And if you're just not sure too, right, you can also run just prime test, right? To make sure that fluid is coming into this. So Vincent, switch over to the iPad real quick. So here we are on the menu, okay? There's this option of priming.
Yes.
Okay. When we prime, right, we can prime the different reagents or the sample or anything like that, and we will see the fluid come into the cuvette and then exit the cuvette. If you were to prime two fluids, like A and B, you would see both of those come essentially to the same line. Correct. If you saw A come to one line but B not come up to that same line, what does that tell you? Well, there's actually resistance on B. I'm not pulling in the right amount on B.
Or if you even look carefully enough, what I have seen is you can actually see the little bubbles of air because maybe there is a crack in one of those little 90-degree fittings. So you'll see that little bubble just pop up, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
wait,
If it's just pulling in reagent, then all of a sudden you see a bubble. That's part of your answer right there.
That's it. Call me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. So you guys are like, I can't believe, at the end of this, we're going to talk about what Neptune Systems does to be there for you.
Absolutely.
Right. So if this feels very overwhelming, Carlos is here for you. And Neptune Systems is here for you. You will be successful. And like I said, this is fringe, right?
Yeah.
Like this is not the common thing. But I just I felt like this, what I want to get into Let's Talk Reef on today was I wanted to get into the weeds. I wanted to get into the details.
Let's do it, man. I
and
love it.
You're great with the Trident, so I thought, what better time to do it?
Well, let's do it, man.
Here we go. So now we're getting into number 2 and number 1.
Right.
Number 2 and number 1, these are the most common issues that we see, and it's test A fail, test B fail, test C fail.
Sure.
Okay? This is almost exactly for all the reasons we just talked about.
Yep.
Okay? It's just more severe.
That's
right?
it.
So this now is a pinch valve that isn't just kind of not working. It totally isn't working.
That's right.
It's not opening up at all. This isn't a pickup assembly that's a little bit off. This is a pickup assembly that fell off into the bottle.
Yeah.
Right? It is not pulling in any reagent or anything like that. Carlos getting some shout outs. I love that.
Hey, story.
So, essentially, when we get those type of errors, it's because we weren't even able to titrate to endpoint. We basically kept on doing it, and the color change never even happened, which means that there's either A, so little reagent, or B, so little water getting into the solution that we can't actually do a titration.
Right. We're outside. We can either be outside of that range for whatever reason that it just completely fails.
Yes, absolutely. And that leads us into the number 1 reason that things do not work is no water sample.
Yeah, I find that a lot. You go away on vacation, but you go away right in between where it's time for you to change that reagent A, or it's time for you to change all 3 reagent bottles.
Or you didn't know that you had to change reagents.
Well, or something happened, right? And you're where you place the pickup tube in your sump, it somehow for some reason got exposed to air. You've been drawing air, and now it's just aired out, and it just stayed with a little bit of water in the lines, and you're like, what is going on?
Hey, Vincent. In my office, there's a syringe on my desk. Can you go grab it for me? Sorry. I put myself on mute. I don't know if anyone actually heard me, but I forgot to get a tool that I wanted to use for this next part.
Well, it's important. It makes a huge difference, especially in doing what we're about to do.
So no water sample. That happens because the way the Trident works, and there's reasons why we did it this way. We keep water in this sample line at all times.
It's always primed.
It's always primed and always ready. It doesn't mean we use that water for the test.
Correct.
Right? The reason why we keep that water in there is because if we evacuated that every single time, there would always be a little bit of water left in it. Okay? And that would dry out far more faster and get salt crystals in it much more quickly.
Yes.
Okay? So as a result of that, thank you. As a result of that, right, what will happen is if you don't run a test, eventually that water is going to evaporate.
But where does the salt go?
It stays behind, just like in your aquarium.
Science.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, I needed that. So, so the fresh water, just like with your aquarium, why you have our auto top off and everything else. Oh, there it is. Just like you have auto top off and everything else, that fresh water goes away eventually. Okay, it takes a while to evaporate in the small amount of space that is inside of this.
Correct.
Okay, but what will happen is if you had some other error or some other reason why the Trident wasn't testing, like your waste was full or something like that, and you didn't address that, now you have a much more serious error.
Yes.
Right? And so a lot of times people will say, oh my gosh, I changed the reagents and I had no water sample, blah, 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 blah. You had no water sample far before the time you changed the reagents. It's just now you're seeing that because you then tried to run a test.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So how do we take care of that, Carlos?
But first and foremost, Breno, what's up, man? Love you.
Got some fans out here today.
Yeah, man.
Family watching and all?
Family, got friends. I got the whole reefing community behind me. And the Neptune family.
Yes.
You know, I can't complain.
It's good stuff.
So now, first and foremost, whenever we're getting into the no water sample ever, we're going to get into a little bit of the hairiness here, and we want to pay close attention to these portions.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to grab the...
So what I'm going to kind of do, I'm going to listen to how you kind of tell me how to do it.
Sure.
But we're going to kind of show you how you do it on this, because getting this guy out, that's a process.
Yes.
Okay. And something you typically would want to avoid, right? You want to do this inside the Trident.
And this is why we remove the outer cover. It's a lot easier than trying to do this through the reagent drawer.
Yes. So now, basically, you got this guy here, right? And then what do I do?
So then I will then instruct you, say, hey, you're going to have the solenoid at the upper left-hand side, the 10 o'clock position.
The 10 o'clock position, exactly.
Yes, and normally they're labeled 3.
So you can see here, this is the noon, this is the 2, this is the 10 o'clock position right here, okay? And so you can also see the pinch valve or the solenoid is labeled 3. But anyways, what do we do on that?
So now we have to remove the tubing from that pinch valve or solenoid. So we have to push in on that button and pull the tubing down.
All right.
So just push the button in simultaneously and then pull the tubing away from that solenoid.
Right, right. And so I'm doing this just from the side right now.
That's it.
Right? And like I'm not trying to get in from the front of it or anything like that.
No.
I'm just doing it from the side.
Yep. Just go ahead and push in on that button and pull it down. I normally find it easier if you push in with that right hand, with your right index finger, pull down with that so that you're pulling from the left-hand side.
You really don't even need to push in the button. But
no, you can just pull it all down.
So then what do I do?
So then the next thing is that center hexagonal piece, the manifold, we want to disconnect that tubing from that portion.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to basically, we've pulled this guy out, right? So I'm going to do it without doing the button because I'm holding this, right? And then I'm basically just remove this here from the manifold like that.
That's it.
Right? So that's what we've done. So now we've got this guy just flailing in the wind, right?
That's it. Now we have a loose tube. So now what we want to do is we want to grab a certain type of syringe.
Let me do that on the actual way that they would do that.
Absolutely.
So now I'm just going to pull that off of the manifold in here so you guys can kind of see me do that too. Okay,
perfect.
Cool. Now what?
So now we want to grab a certain type of syringe. Normally, if you have an Aptasia X syringe or with those little metal tips at the end, make sure that they're the straight one. Those are going to work very well. Also, if you have a Salifert 1 ml syringe with those pink, blue, or white clear pipette tips, those work very well also.
Yeah. So basically, what you would use for your home test kit, and you always need to have a home test kit, right? Trust but verify. Right?
Absolutely.
Always, you can't always put everything and be like, oh, everything's going to work just perfectly, right? You always have to have a secondary source of information. When we do the Trident calibration solution, right? Do you know how many ICP tests we send out, Carlos? Have I told you about this before?
I know a little bit about this, but the double-blind tests and all these...
We do triple-blind tests.
Yeah.
None of them come back the same, number one. We've never sent one water sample out and gotten the same thing back from everyone. It's always different, okay? Then so it's always trust and verify. Then we use other methods and other science and things like that to get the numbers on the outside.
Even independent laboratories.
Yes, we take all the information. Anyhow, we digressing. So syringe here, right? And then I'm just gonna So
then what you're gonna do is you're gonna insert the tip of that syringe. But excuse me, first and foremost, you can use either aquarium water or RO water, whichever you feel most comfortable with. So we want to fill the syringe with some water, and then we're gonna go ahead and insert the tip of that syringe onto the tubing that we just disconnected from that manifold, and we're gonna slowly push on that plunger. If as you start pushing on that plunger, you feel pressure, that's a clear indication that there is a clog.
Right, so you're going to feel that pressure, but just keep on pushing it, right?
Keep on pushing.
Now, sometimes I find that the clog is very bad, and what you need to do in that situation is you actually need to get in here into the tubing and roll this in your hands a little bit to break up those crystals.
Yeah, you'll feel it.
You normally that doesn't need to happen, but sometimes it does.
And even if you don't break it up entirely, just massaging that tube between your fingers and just slowly, continuously just roll it between your fingers.
While applying the
pressure at the same time, we'll just get that lubricity to come in and push it out.
Yeah, and essentially, you do the same thing on the waist. The waist is normally empty, right? So you're not normally going to have that problem on the waist. Sometimes you see that happen, sometimes you don't, okay?
Yeah.
So now we have to reconnect it. That's actually the more difficult part. You know, so walk me through how we'd reconnect it.
So the first thing that I always recommend is grabbing a pair of tweezers. I have large hands. Getting into the Trident isn't easy for me, so I like to grab either an angled pair of tweezers at the end, fine point tweezers, just nothing sharp that can puncture the line or damage the line in any way. And then I like to grab the tubing about 3/8 of an inch away from the tip, and then there is a little nipple on that manifold that tube needs to be slid over. So there's a tiny little nipple, there's a little square cut out there at that portion, and we want to make sure that that tube gets slid over, the tubing gets slid over that little nipple, and that we push it down flushly and well seated as far down as we can get it.
I find it's also really good to put the Trident on its back like this here.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You know, so when you put it on its back like this, it actually gives you a little bit more ability to come in from the side, like I'm going to do here. And then essentially, I'll do the same thing on the exposed one. But essentially, you just kind of slide it in there, and you might say some words that you regret as you're trying to do this. You know, it does take some finessing.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun, but patience is a virtue. And
nothing good ever happens fast in a reef tank, Carlos.
No.
Nothing good never happens fast. Nope.
I've never seen a mackerel grow 12 inches overnight.
All right, so I'm going to do it here just so you guys can see. I'm going to pull this back a little bit. Hopefully you can kind of see this happen. But essentially, I put pressure on the opposite side, right? And then I just slide it right on.
Sure.
Right. This is a much easier way to do it, but do not take this out unless you were instructed, so it's not easy to get back in.
No.
And then at that point, you may have knocked off the dosing head one. Just slide that one back on, and you'll be good to go.
That's it.
And then we just put it back in the pinch valve.
So now to connect it back into the pinch valve, you do not need to push on that button.
Nope.
So what you want to do is push the tubing. There's a channel on the underside of that pinch valve or solenoid. We want to push the tubing into that solenoid as far as we can get it. Don't worry, you're not going to break the tubing. You're going to feel a little bit of resistance. It is a pinch valve. It is putting pressure on that tubing. We got to push through that. And once it's pushed in all the way, perfect. So, now, one thing I do want to mention before we move forward, especially what we're looking here, if you have reconnected your tubing back to the manifold and onto the solenoid or pinch valve, if the tubing doesn't look nice and straight, you want to go ahead and straighten that out.
So what he's saying is, if it's coming off, if it's not all the way to the edge, that's a problem. Then it could pop off.
Or if this is if there's an angle or this is bent here.
So basically he's saying if it's like that, that's not what you want. You see there how it's off to kilter? Basically push on that button and you can slide it back down again. So now they're both even.
There you go.
Okay. Good way that I do this is just from the bottom to top here. I just use one finger on one side of it, one finger on the other, and I just
push it up.
Push it in. You do the pushing on the outside arm, right? On the outside arm, you push and pull that up. And that's basically how you would clear a clog from the Trident.
That's it.
Okay. Sometimes clogs will happen in the sample line themselves. So before you dive into this, I was kind of thinking about this as we were talking about. Before you dive into this, just make sure the sample line itself is clear, right? So the sample line that's in your aquarium.
The exterior, long, black sample line.
And if that's all clogged up, you know, just order a new one. All right. Thank you guys for joining us for Let's Talk Reef. We will see you next time. We will do this again, provided that it's like not a holiday. I'm not sure. We'll do this again in 2 weeks on Tuesday at 5 p.m. And who knows what we'll talk about then. If you guys have something you want to talk about, let's hear it in the comments.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.